Hey, good morning, everyone. Uh, Welcome back to Weekly Emsights. My name is Corey Lagrange, and it's good to be back. We took a little bit of time off with the current environment around us, but we're back today, and we're going to be talking with a very special guest, Mr. Jim Sellers from Intalytics. This is actually the first time we have a guest outside of the agency, so we're excited for that. And Jim, why don't you tell us a little bit about your role at your company and a little bit about what you guys do?
And I think you have me muted. Oh,
There
there
we
we
go.
go.
Should be good to go.
Hey, listen, there's no thing as a webinar without at least one technical glitch, so we've got it behind
We'll shake them
us.
all out at the beginning.
Outstanding. I'm Senior Director of Marketing Solutions at Intalytics. Intalytics is a predictive geospatial analytics company. We help large national and regional brands in two ways. Number one, we help them prioritize their capital investment decisions by creating predictive models that inform their real estate and site selection decisions. So think of your favorite big brand. Where are they going to build their next location? How much revenue is it forecasted to generate? Number two, we also have a marketing solutions practice, which I lead. There, we work with our clients to help them leverage the capital investments that they've already made. The way that we do all of this is by assembling large national data sets. Think of a big data play where we analyze hundreds of variables in order to either help our clients understand where they should locate their next store or how to improve their marketing return on investment by precision targeting.
Awesome. So I imagine that is taking a look at data sets from both inside the organization and external environmental factors, right?
That's precisely correct. Yes, our clients share their data with us. We match that against the data that we have to bring to bear, and use that to create a answer to the various business problems that they work with us on.
Gotcha. That's quite the Herculean task in a lot of circumstances, I would imagine.
Well, hey, it's a fascinating group of clients that we have the fortune to work with. It's also a fascinating time right now, as all of you know, with the rapid shifts that are going on in the macro and the micro environment. I can certainly not think of a more challenging time in my career as a marketer than this one that we're facing today.
It's not to keep reiterating the terms that we hear all the time, but there really has not been a time like this in our recent history, at the very least. So it really makes you know the job of marketers and advertisers and communicators who are so traditionally cemented and grounded by data. It makes it exceptionally hard because we're used to making plays based on observation, processing the data, and figuring out the right course of action there, right? But not having historic data to kind of measure against, that's really one-to-one with this current situation that we're in, really makes this sort of activity tough.
Well, and Corey, you've hit one important nail on the head. That's going to be a theme of what I talk about today, and that's the importance of having real-time data that represents what's going on today. Since if your organization is relying on strictly on the past without a view into what's happening today, yesterday, last week, you're going to be missing substantial shifts that are happening in the macro environment.
Very true, very true. And for everybody live on the call, I didn't mention this at the beginning, but if you have any specific questions, make sure to drop those in the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on that, and if anybody has questions as we go along, we'll do our best to work those in or follow up with you after the call. But Jim, let's talk a little bit about, and won't spend too much time here because everybody's aware of, the big picture of what's going on around us. But what are some of the things that we're observing now that make measuring active and present data a challenge, and some of those things? What are the big picture observations you've got?
Sure, before I answer that for the audience, let me just reiterate, being a audience member in a lot of webinars, these are so much more interesting and engaging when I'm responding to your questions rather than just talking off the script that I have in front of me. So please use that chat function. What's happened post-COVID? Number of things. Obviously, massive increase in issues around keeping customers and employees healthy, shifting business models, new products being introduced, think contactless services. Who would have figured that the face mask category would be an enormous business opportunity? Supply chain disruptions, you've all experienced out of stocks, extended delivery times, pricing pressures. Think of dentists having to implement surcharges for personal protective equipment, huge increases in online e-commerce and delivery services. The whole omni-channel landscape has shifted remarkably. More and more consumers preparing and consuming their food at home rather than out of home. And businesses closing, an enormously changing competitive set, not just the mom and pops that are stressed out from the pressures of this, and not just big retailers like J.C. Penney's, but think the airlines, Hertz rental car, the entire hospitality category facing severe and foundational threats. So
Absolutely.
those are some of the obvious things. Let me talk about 5 things that aren't quite so obvious. Your brand's core customer profiles are changing. The distance, if you run a store or have a brick and mortar operation, the distance that your customers are willing to drive to shop or dine with you are changing. Value perceptions are shifting. There's been an enormous increase in screen time, not just as that which we're experiencing here, but for individual consumers. And then obviously substantial impacts in the real estate market. So let me tick through a number of those with just a little bit more detail.
Yeah, please do.
Core customer profiles are changing. We have line of sight on a real-time basis to what's happening, say, for a restaurant client, fast casual operator with 1,000+ locations. They are experienced, or they have experienced, a significant loss of share from affluent, older families. The visit share for this particular brand has decreased double digits, about 11%, for all of their households with $100,000 or more of annual income.
Wow.
They're gaining share from less affluent, younger singles and couples. 15% increases for households with income of less than $49,000. So those are just 2 data points about the extent to which one client example is experiencing those shifts. What we call the drive time trade area is different. So think of the geography which your businesses serve. Some are contracting, others, a handful only, are expanding. Lunch drive time for many restaurant concepts, substantial decreases. We're seeing 25% less miles driven from the home location to the restaurant location. Work from home means fewer customers for businesses that are surrounding office parks and downtown areas and large headquarters. Those are a couple examples of how businesses are serving a smaller geography. In some cases, we see in our healthcare client portfolio, for example, that they're actually serving a larger geography as access to healthcare services have been limited. Expansions in the distance that customers are willing to drive, up to 10%. Shifts in perception of value is the number 3 item that we see. For example, value and warehouse grocers are gaining significant share of wallet relative to premium grocers. Think about shopping malls. Large shopping malls have experienced share declines or traffic declines of up to 80%. All shopping centers are being impacted, but to different degrees. Community centers and outlet malls are losing share, but at nowhere near the clip of the share loss for large regional malls. Number 4, enormous increases in screen time. More than ever before, we're seeing increased opportunity for digital advertisers to win the digital bid because people are spending more time on their devices, and you're able to win it at a lower cost per thousand, a lower CPM. This is particularly true on the programmatic exchange. Here, not the cost per click or social media, but particularly on programmatic. And then finally, in the real estate impacts, as more and more individuals are working from home, businesses realize they don't need the large overhead of a big office. We can be equally as productive and more productive working from home. This is putting downward pressure on commercial rents, and over time we feel are going to result in increased vacancy rates. It's also hitting the residential market. San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles, dense, large urban areas, we're beginning to see signs of a flight in residences out of those large centers into more suburban and exurban locations.
That's a lot to unpack there, Jim. Thank you for all of those key points. I think a lot of this, you can kind of, we're talking, a lot of the data sets that we, just talked about and touched on, we're seeing, a lot of this data is coming from the restaurant and fast casual and food side, right? Is that a lot of the data that we're kind of pulling some of these main insights on as far as an industry vertical goes?
Well, in our business, we have significant number of clients who fall into retail and restaurant. We also service banking, pure online plays, insurance, business services organization, educational providers, a whole host of healthcare, from specialty providers such as veterinary clinics,
sure,
to urgent care, urgent medical systems. So we're seeing significant shifts in one direction or another, in one form or another, across all of the sectors that we serve.
Awesome. So this is really cross-industry observations that we're touching on right now.
Yeah, yes, that's correct.
Awesome. And it's interesting to see how some of these things parallel along with some of the work that Influence does and things on the marketing and advertising side, where you mentioned that the core customer profiles are changing, where we're seeing some loss in share from affluent older families and groups. It also follows, interestingly enough, we do a lot of things in organic search, and we've seen some significant shifts in browsing and search behavior on Google and on Bing based on the demographics that make up the user base of those two platforms. So we were just having the conversation with a client recently who is in professional education, so licensure and things like that, where they've seen a great increase in organic search revenue despite an almost a very substantial decrease in Bing revenue. And that profile is exactly what you're outlining. It's a little older of a user base. It's people who are on commercial devices like their work computers or work laptops. since that's the default search engine on a lot of computers and things like that. So these are some of the parallels that we can start to make these connections to kind of find, if not causation, we can actually find some correlation. So we can start to navigate and figure out, okay, where do we go from here? We're seeing, these consumer shifts. We're seeing these audience shifts. How does that translate into the things that I do? So I think that's really interesting, especially on the demographic shifts. The drive time and the time of day stuff is something that we see all the time as well, since people's kind of defined and core work hours are now not what they used to be. They have a little more flexibility in schedule, right? So we might see some people starting that workday at 5 a.m. and ending at 2:30, or we might see some people starting at 11 and moving, into the nighttime hours to get some of this work done. So it's just really interesting to see these things that you're seeing on the macro level surface in some of these other specific areas. It's really insightful.
Well, and I think it just drives home the extent to which these changes are occurring, not only in the physical world but in the virtual world.
Absolutely. We have a question here in the chat that we might be able to touch on. So the question is, regarding grocery, what recommendations do you have for some of these premium grocers who are starting to lose some of this market share? How can they reclaim some of that and reactivate that user base that they might have lost to some of the competition?
Okay, yeah. Grocery is a really interesting category. I obviously saw substantial increases in rates of shopping and average basket size immediately following shelter in place coming down. As people's behavior has seemed to stabilize now, I mentioned that we've seen a bigger shift to value and away from premium. I think the challenge for premium is to leverage the ability that addressable media represents. Don't simply continue to rely on the traditional circular that shows up in your mailbox once a week. Don't just work your email list and those people who may be members of your loyalty program, but leverage those cost efficiencies that are available today, for example, in the programmatic market, to identify, serve your ads directly to those larger families, more affluent households. Keep your brand top of mind. It's the basic marketing 101. Maintain frequency, but do it in a way that leverages addressable digital targeting. That way, you can minimize the expense but maximize the return.
Absolutely. That's a really great note. And I think we've talked about this whenever we touch on different industries, but now, especially for premium grocers and even, premium products across the board, where your ticket value is higher than some of these value brands, value alternatives, you can do a little more of this creative media placement and a little more of this direct to consumer, kind of thing, because your average order value and your average ticket value is so much higher than some of these other guys who have to maintain such a tight cost per acquisition, where they're completely priced out of some forms of media altogether because their margins are so thin on such a low ticket item. So a lot of people have relied on these low conversion cost tactics in the past and they've worked, but that's whenever things were hunky-dory and people weren't worried about their check at the end of the day or the end of the month and week. But that's something to keep in mind, that we may need to spend up in some industries right now, and retracting could do more harm than good, but making sure that you're doing it in a smart way and you're keeping an eye on those KPIs along the way. It can be painful to say, okay, well, let's double down on marketing and advertising now. But as long as you're informed and as long as you're keeping track of these KPIs that level up into a conversion, I think exactly what you're saying. Now is an opportunity for brands to take advantage of some of these different approaches, for sure.
Well, and I would argue that there are many brands out there whose old set of KPIs don't necessarily make sense in the new world.
Sure.
I didn't even mention, contactless pickup or delivery when I was speaking about grocery, because I think that's obvious to everyone. The point that I think it illustrates, however, is that the business model of a grocer is in the process of changing. You know, does a big box grocery store that has a pickup associated with it make sense in the new world going forward? Or would it a alternative real estate strategy or distribution strategy, such as that which ghost kitchens represent on the restaurant side, make more sense? What if we just had, what if we had direct delivery from a number of mini distribution centers that exist within the real estate premises vacated by other businesses that have gone that have gone belly up? So it's not just about communicating your value proposition, it's thinking about, if we were to start our business today, what would our value proposition be? Who is our target customer segment? And what's that price quality balance that we want to communicate? I think it's been very easy for brands to have gotten caught up in the frenetic pace of what needs to happen tomorrow, and that they could well be overlooking those structural shifts in the business model and how that impacts who they market to and what the message is, not just how you deliver the message.
Yeah. Well, and talking about, you know, what the message is, there's another question in the chat that kind of leads me to a larger question. So for you know, industries like education, where there's been, you know, some kind, you know, there's been a disparity in the perception of value when it comes to an online X, Y, and Z versus an in-person X, Y, and Z. So we see a lot of this on the B2B and the service side, where you might provide a specific service where you're really selling brain power and not a tangible object. How are some ways that we can start to shift the conversation and talk about value perception when right now we're doing so much more digitally, and so, you know, a lot of the in-person stuff, that one-to-one, that relational thing that we've seen in the B2B space help businesses thrive in the past? How do we pivot from that and show value and craft that message today?
Well, again, I think it's a function of having tracking mechanisms and a clear line of sight to the changes in behaviors of the markets and the audiences that you've historically served, and how are their behaviors relative to your new offerings changing.
Sure.
You know, certainly if you think about large educational institutions and the difficulties that they're going to have to continue to have classrooms full of folks who are historically, you know, not been 6 feet apart, what is an online offering, an online value proposition that still carries a you know, a high quality along with it? I think that's an entirely new business model that they need to be considering. Is it still 50-minute classes, or is it a series of 30-minute classes staged more frequently? Is it lecture or is it interaction? I don't have a great answer on that. That's man, you hit on one that's I think going to be particularly challenging.
Yeah, but even, you know, as you just started to talk through it, that's kind of like the line of thought that we need to be having right now when we're rethinking some of, you know, where we go from here, right? It's not just repositioning your message or reinserting yourself into the conversation. It's thinking about how the core product we provide should shift, you know, with the current considerations. I love that thought, that now that people are at home but have more responsibilities, things like childcare, things like frequent interruptions, all of these things, how, you know, in that scenario, it might be more appropriate to have more frequent, shorter sessions, like you mentioned. Thinking beyond just how we repitch what we do, and thinking more along the lines of, how do we reimagine what we do and make it more timely and more, more of a value and more of a good fit for the current environment that we find ourselves in, right? Because people are trying to reinvent the wheel that they had, right? Where right now we might not even need wheels.
If you were launching your brand today, who would be your target customer segment? What is your business model? What's your value proposition? What's the digital and or omni-channel strategy behind your brand? And how can what you deliver build community along with it? I mean, as we're all sheltering in place, we have virtual communities, but is that enough? And to the extent that brands can, build and deliver on a sense of community across all sectors, I think that's going to be a very important and consideration for the future. And brands that can do that successfully are going to be rewarded.
And this just rings true how it has time and time again. We've been preaching the gospel of building community for a while now in the communications sector, right? We see even ad platforms and social media platforms centering more about building communities. Things like Facebook, their groups function is the core of their business model now. It's creating small communities where you can own your dialogue and own that, and that's just coming to fruition more and more today. Unfortunately, some people haven't had the opportunity to do that yet. So they're going to have to think about now what we do. Now, how are we going to shift? What are the things to focus on right now to take action and move forward? If we can't reimagine the whole business, what are the first steps that we can take to realign and move forward effectively? So I'd be interested to hear where you think brands should go from here. If they've just been kind of treading water through all of this and haven't made any major shifts or realignments, where should they go? What should they do?
Either start investing or continue to invest in tracking mechanisms that will tell you who your core customer is, where they live, and what they're worth. That's the key to being able to identify and find more who are like them, so that you can retain your current customers and continue to grow at a right pace by acquiring new customers. Because Intalytics is such a believer in and has proven the value of geospatial thinking, I would encourage all marketers to think geospatially. Having uncovered the value of location-based marketing, geography, distance about 20 years ago, and having put it to work for a number of the big brands that I've had the fortune to work for over the years, that's an area of significant opportunity. Think on the digital marketing side, it's not just about who you direct your ad to, but it's about where they live. If you are a brick and mortar operator, a common miss, in my opinion, that I see regularly in digital is geo-digital delivery of ads to an entire zip code, when only 15% of the households within that zip code are either your current customer or fit your current customer profile and could be an acquisition target. Leveraging addressable media then is key to that. It's not just about digital to a zip code, it's about digital to a household. And then I would say also, in addition to adding geospatial thinking, think about, and this is for the brick and mortar operators, your real estate strategy. Competitors are going to be going out of business. You've probably already renegotiated your rents down, so your cost basis is lower. That may well only to be an offset, a decrease in the top line, but once your top line begins to improve, are you in the right location? Are there opportunities to either expand or relocate, get closer to your current customers, and continue to lower your cost basis.
Very true. All great points. Jim, let's unpack a few of those really quick. I know we're coming up on time, but some of this is great stuff. Let's start with addressable media. First, give us a quick definition of what you call addressable media, and tell us a little bit of how we could take advantage of that from a channel perspective, from an opportunity perspective, things like that.
Sure. So think of your household. How many people live there? How much money you make? How long you've lived there? Are there children or not? All of these are data points that we have available to bring to bear for our clients, so that we can identify those households that are those that will be the tightest fit with the marketing message on any given campaign you're looking to extend. We target digital media only to those households. So if you think about your block, Corey, 10 households on your block, maybe 8 of them look like your household. But what we want to do is identify those 2 on your block for any particular brand and any particular message, and deliver the ad straight to that household. You don't need to, in the world of digital technology today, to spray and pray and engage in mass marketing, where mass marketing is zip code level or block group or census tract level marketing. So when I mean digital, I mean direct to the household, whether it's through a banner ad as you're surfing, or through addressable television. OTT and CTV has, those prices are more affordable than ever. That is a great way to be able to get your video message to your target audience while they're streaming content.
Awesome. And what are some of those channels that you see as opportunity channels right now?
I think OTT and CTV are clearly an opportunity channel.
Awesome.
I continue to be amazed at the ads that I see as I am, watching TV, and the percentage of them of which are not relevant to me. Some marketer somewhere is spending money getting a message to me, and that money is being absolutely wasted. So why not divert those funds into targeted addressable TV? Video, dynamic banner ads and pre-rolled video. Again, cost per thousand is coming down, more opportunity to win the bid on the programmatic exchanges from the increases in screen time. A great way to be disruptive and compelling and capture the attention of your target audience.
Awesome.
Again, I would also say, I've talked a lot about digital, but direct mail, old school direct mail, is performing at a higher response rate than any time in the marketing history where it's been measured. The advantage of direct mail is that you can't delete it, you can't ignore it, you have to touch it. Targeted direct mail on an addressable level to individual households, not to everyone, but to specific modeled households from, that are identified through predictive analytics, is, depending on your business model, is more likely than ever to have a positive return on investment.
That's awesome. That's a great tidbit. So I know we want to be respectful of everyone's time, but if you have any closing thoughts, things that you want to leave the audience with, bits of wisdom, we'd love to hear it.
Go back to the basics. Invest in understanding who your core customer is, where he or she lives, and what they're worth. You got to be able to do that if you want to find more like them. Add geospatial thinking and insights to your toolkit. Leverage addressable media, and don't forget your real estate strategy if you're a brick and mortar operator.
Awesome. All great pieces. Thanks so much. Jim, we're at time, but tell everybody where we can find more from you guys, what else we can expect to find from you guys, and how we can engage with you.
Sure. A lot of these points and more you can find on our website, www.intalytics.com. That's INTALALYTICS.com. The links to my email and to our website are on the registration form on the Influence website.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll share those back out to everyone in attendance today. So we'll make sure that if you have any additional questions, we give you a way that you can send them in. And hopefully we'll be seeing more of Jim here. This was all awesome, actionable insights. Thank you so much for all of this, Jim. We really appreciate it.
Corey, enjoyed it thoroughly, and it was a pleasure to get to know you and look forward to more of this as it makes sense. Thank you.
Absolutely. So for everybody out there, if you want to engage with us and get more of this content, you can subscribe for notifications for the next subject matter, upcoming guests, and all of that good stuff by visiting more.influence.com/subscriptions. And if you sign up there, like we said, we'll be sending a recap and the video recording of this session, as well as links and how you can reach out to Jim and his incredible team. In addition, we at Influence, we're still doing what we're calling these 30-minute marketing therapy sessions, where you can submit a question to us, a current concern or issue that you're having in your marketing, advertising, or communications, program, and we'll be happy to sit down with you for 30 minutes, no questions asked on our part, no commitments needed on yours. We're just here to help everybody traverse this and come out better for it on the other side. And you can do that by emailing us at expert@influence.com. Again, thanks, Jim, and thank all of you guys for attending. And we'll be back soon with another edition of Emsights Weekly. Until next time, see you guys soon.